In the stillness of a wooden room, Daniel knelt with weary bones, whispering into the dark. Daniel said, "God, if you are real, do not leave me here." His words shook, fragile as glass. A candle trembled, flame unnaturally stretching high, bending without wind. Daniel's chest clenched, the air sharp with metallic taste. Shadows swirled across walls, defying the glow. The floor shuddered softly, its vibration rising into his bones. His breath hitched as the candle erupted into cold white fire, light drowning the room. A silver-edged silhouette loomed in brilliance, towering and faceless. Silence pressed heavy, thicker than air. A voice rumbled within his chest. "You have been seen." Daniel's heart pounded as unseen weight marked his soul forever. Daniel collapsed backward, gasping as brilliance dulled into steady glow. Daniel said, "What are you?" But silence gave no reply. The room bathed in pale fire, shadows stiff against walls. Crawling forward, Daniel reached trembling hand toward the flame, but recoiled at its icy sting. His body shook between awe and terror. Daniel whispered, "Was this mercy or madness?" The silence carried weight, heavy and unrelenting. Tears streaked his face as he said, "If you see me, do not leave me unseen again." His cry dissolved into quiet, yet the presence lingered like a hidden gaze pressing against his spirit. Daniel leaned back against the wall, chest heaving with ragged breaths. Every thought in his mind clashed between wonder and dread. His father's last words haunted him, "You will find God when he finds you." Once mocked, now they echoed like prophecy. Daniel laughed bitterly through tears, whispering, "So this is what it takes to be seen." Silence weighed heavy yet alive, pressing against his soul. His body trembled as if unseen eyes still lingered. Daniel whispered, "I don't know if I can survive being known." The presence felt like judgment and grace, impossible to bear or release. Daniel forced himself upright, knees trembling as though strength drained from him. Daniel whispered, "If this is real, why me?" The cold flame offered clarity without warmth. Wooden boards groaned beneath him, though the air remained still. His heart pounded as he murmured, "Am I chosen or cursed?" Guilt and shame rushed into his mind, yet in that light he felt laid bare. Pressing his forehead to the floor, Daniel said, "If you demand my soul, take it, but do not leave me in silence." The weight of unseen presence lingered, listening though unseen. Daniel's voice cracked as he said, "I am broken and I have nothing left." His cry carried no mask for the first time in years. Silence pressed around him, not crushing but steadying. Daniel whispered, "If you are grace, do not let me be forgotten again." The candle flared brighter, shadows recoiling. His chest eased, though his breath still trembled. For a fleeting moment, Daniel felt his words did not vanish into void, but into someone who listened. Relief surged, fragile as glass. He wept until exhaustion took him, the cold fire burning on as witness. Daniel wandered through the empty streets before dawn, his breath visible in the cold air. The fire of the night haunted him, yet he carried no proof. He whispered, "Was it real, or was I losing myself?" His steps echoed, heavy and uncertain, past shuttered shops and dark alleys. The silence seemed alive, pressing in like unseen eyes. Daniel stopped when he saw an older man standing beneath a street lamp, hands clasped, head bowed. The stranger lifted his gaze, calm and piercing as if waiting. Daniel hesitated, feeling drawn yet afraid. The man said, "You are searching for what already seeks you." Daniel's chest tightened, words failing as the figure's presence felt heavier than ordinary flesh. The man stepped closer, and Daniel sensed this was no accident but a meeting written in time. Daniel froze as Elijah studied him with eyes that carried both kindness and authority. Elijah said, "You have been seen, and now you are called." Daniel whispered, "I do not want this. I am broken." Elijah's gaze softened, yet his words held weight. Broken vessels carry the clearest light. Daniel's throat tightened, anger rising. You do not know me. Elijah said, But he does. Silence wrapped around them, broken only by the faint hum of a distant streetlight. Daniel turned his head, shame pulling at his heart, but Elijah's presence steadied him. Elijah lifted a hand, not to command but to invite, and Daniel felt both fear and hope stirring together. Daniel said, I prayed, and something came, but it terrified me. Elijah nodded slowly, his face lined with years of faith and sorrow. Grace terrifies before it heals. You felt its fire. Daniel looked down, ashamed. It saw me. All of me. Elijah said, That is the beginning. Daniel's voice broke. I cannot survive being known. Elijah stepped closer, speaking with quiet certainty. You will not survive as you are, but you will be remade. Daniel's heart pounded, fear mingling with longing. He wanted to run, yet his feet rooted. For the first time he felt the weight of guidance instead of silence. Daniel clenched his fists, whispering, Why me? I have done nothing worth grace. Elijah's expression was grave but gentle. Grace is not earned, it is given. Daniel turned away, chest tightening with anger. I am nothing but a failure. Elijah stepped beside him. Failures are soil where new life grows. Daniel's breath faltered, hearing echoes of his past mistakes pressing in like ghosts. Elijah placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and unshaken. You are seen not for what you were, but for what you will become. Daniel closed his eyes, pain and hope clashing inside. Daniel whispered, Then why do I still feel empty? Elijah looked toward the horizon where faint light touched the sky. Because what is empty must first be filled. Daniel followed his gaze. The first trace of dawn painting pale colors across the clouds. His chest eased slightly, though his mind still battled. Elijah said, Walk, and you will learn. Daniel hesitated, but his feet began to move alongside Elijah's. The silence between them felt different now, not void but waiting. Daniel carried fear still, but in that fragile dawn he sensed for the first time that his brokenness might not be the end. Daniel followed Elijah down a narrow alley that opened into a quiet courtyard. The faint dawn glow painted broken bricks with silver. Daniel said, I should not be here. I do not belong. Elijah's voice was steady. You belong where the truth calls. Daniel pressed his hand against the wall, heart racing, torn between fleeing and staying. His voice cracked. What if I fail again? Elijah looked at him, eyes carrying the weight of many years. Failure is a step, not an ending. Daniel turned away, fists tightening, shadows in his mind louder than Elijah's calm. The courtyard felt both safe and suffocating, a crossroads between faith and fear. A new voice cut through the morning silence. A woman stepped forward from the shadows of the courtyard. Sarah, 36-year-old Caucasian female with auburn hair and worn coat, said, Do not listen. All of this is a lie. Daniel flinched, caught between Elijah's calm and Sarah's sharp defiance. Elijah's face tightened, not with anger but concern. Daniel whispered, Who are you? Sarah said, Someone who escaped the same trap they want for you. Elijah's tone deepened. Skepticism is a veil, not freedom. Sarah glared at him. And blind faith is a cage. Daniel stood frozen, the tension splitting his spirit between hope and doubt. Daniel said, I saw something. It was not human. Sarah shook her head. Fear twists the mind. You imagined what you wanted to see. Elijah countered. He was seen by what is real, not imagined. Sarah's voice grew firm. I once believed as you do, and it nearly destroyed me. Daniel stepped back, his chest burning with conflict. He said, Why would it choose me? Elijah said, Because even in brokenness you are not forgotten. Sarah's eyes softened briefly. Or because brokenness makes you easy prey. Daniel's breath caught, the words striking both hope and terror into his heart. Daniel pressed his palms to his face, whispering, I cannot know what is true. Elijah said, "Truth does not depend on belief. It stands even when you turn away." Sarah's tone cut through his words. "Or it shatters when you look too closely." Daniel lowered his hands, tears mixing with frustration. He said, "I want to believe, but I am terrified." Elijah stepped closer, voice calm. "Faith begins with fear." Sarah shook her head. "Faith begins with surrendering your mind." Daniel looked at them both, caught between the clarity of one and the defiance of the other, torn in ways that made his chest ache. Daniel turned sharply and said, "Both of you speak as if you know what I need, but you are not the one living inside my emptiness." His voice cracked with raw anger. Elijah remained calm. "We only point, the choice is yours." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "And sometimes the only freedom is walking away." Daniel's fists loosened as he whispered, "I do not know where to walk." The silence fell heavy, broken only by the cry of a bird overhead. Elijah said, "Then take one step at a time, and light will meet you." Sarah said, "Or darkness." Daniel closed his eyes, the war inside unresolved. Daniel walked through a ruined church with Elijah and Sarah close behind. Dust swirled through broken stained glass as pale daylight filtered across cracked pews. Daniel said, "This place feels familiar." Elijah's face grew solemn. "You were here before." Daniel frowned, confusion rising. Sarah's tone was sharp. "What do you mean?" Elijah's voice was heavy. "His past lives in these walls." Daniel's breath grew unsteady, flashes of memory flooding back. An argument, a slammed door, a night he swore never to return. His chest tightened as guilt pressed against his soul. He whispered, "I abandoned this place." Daniel traced his hand along a shattered altar, dust clinging to his fingers. He said, "I cursed this place when my father died. I told myself God abandoned us." Elijah's eyes softened with grief. "It was not he who left, Daniel. It was you." Sarah shook her head, voice biting. "Or maybe there was never anyone to begin with." Daniel's hands trembled, anger flashing across his face. He said, "Do not speak of him like that." Sarah glared back, unmoved. Elijah placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "The truth you seek hides in your wound." Daniel felt as if the air itself grew heavy. The silence broke as a deep vibration echoed beneath the ruined floorboards. Daniel's body stiffened, memories of the night's fire rushing back. A dark shadow pooled at the edge of the sanctuary, stretching unnaturally. Elijah whispered, "The Malric watches." Sarah stepped back, fear flashing in her eyes though her lips remained firm. Daniel's voice shook. "Why here? Why now?" Elijah answered, "Because your wound is its doorway." The shadow writhed like smoke, pressing toward them. Daniel fell to his knees, clutching his chest, whispering, "It sees me again." The air grew colder, carrying the weight of unseen malice. Daniel gasped as whispers filled the air, dark voices twisting his memories into accusations. "You left him to die," the voices taunted. Daniel covered his ears, shouting, "Stop!" Elijah cried, "Stand firm. It cannot break you unless you yield." Sarah's face was pale as she whispered, "It knows too much." Daniel's tears streamed as he shouted, "I killed my father with silence. I turned away when he needed me most." The voices grew louder, feeding on his confession. Elijah knelt beside him. "Confession is not defeat, Daniel. It is release." Daniel's sobs shook his body as the shadows pressed tighter. Daniel collapsed forward onto the cracked floor, his tears darkening the dust. Elijah steadied him, saying, "Grace can heal what guilt destroys." Sarah's eyes flickered with conflict, her voice quieter now. "Or perhaps guilt is all that is real." Daniel whispered, "If he sees me, why does he not stop this pain?" Elijah said, "Because healing comes through fire, not escape." The shadow pulsed violently, filling the sanctuary with a suffocating presence. Daniel's chest heaved as he whispered, "I do not know if I can survive this." The air grew so heavy, it felt like time itself was bending. Daniel stood trembling as the shadow grew into a shape tall and monstrous, its edges dripping like smoke and fire. His voice cracked. "I cannot fight this." Elijah stepped forward, voice firm. "You were not called to fight, but to stand." Sarah's eyes widened, her doubt shaken as the ground shook beneath them. Daniel fell to one knee, whispering, "It knows my weakness." The Malric's voice echoed through the ruined church, twisting truth into poison. "You are nothing but your shame." Daniel gripped the floor, torn between despair and defiance, every breath a war inside his chest. Daniel shouted, "Leave me alone." His voice cracked with fury and fear. The Malric laughed, soundless yet crushing, filling the air with dread. Elijah said, "Do not surrender to its lies." Sarah cried, "He cannot withstand this." Daniel slammed his fists to the floor, tears streaming. He whispered, "I do not know who I am without my shame." The Malric's shadow pressed closer, whispering every failure and betrayal. Elijah knelt beside Daniel, voice steady. "Your shame is not your name." Daniel shook violently, torn between two voices, one promising truth, the other drowning him in despair. Daniel gasped as the shadow towered over him, voices inside it twisting into the sound of his father's disappointment. Daniel shouted, "Stop it!" Elijah cried, "It uses memory against you." Sarah whispered, "No one survives this." Daniel's chest burned as he pressed his palms against the ground, trembling with rage and grief. He said, "I am not enough." The Malric leaned closer, whispering, "You will never be enough." Elijah's voice rose, strong. "Grace is not earned, it is given." Daniel's tears fell onto the cracked stone, torn between the voice of darkness and the voice of hope. Daniel cried out, "If I let go, there will be nothing left." Elijah's eyes burned with conviction. "If you let go, grace will remain." Sarah shook her head, voice breaking. "What if grace is the same lie I believed before?" Daniel's hands shook as he raised them upward, body shaking. The Malric roared, its shadow shattering what remained of the stained glass. Daniel closed his eyes, whispering, "If you see me, then show me who I am." The silence pressed thick before the flame in his chest flickered against the darkness. The air split between despair and hope. The ruined church shook as shards of glass rained down, scattering light like fire across the floor. Daniel whispered through tears, "I cannot carry this alone." Elijah's voice was calm yet thunderous. "You were never meant to." The Malric screeched, twisting its form into claws reaching for Daniel. Sarah fell to her knees, eyes wide in terror. Daniel pressed his palms against the ground, the words trembling out. "If grace is real, then let it be enough." The shadow lunged, but for the first time Daniel did not flinch. His chest rose with fragile courage, ready to face the fire. Daniel stood unsteady, the ruined church trembling with every pulse of the shadow. He shouted, "Why do you not stop this?" His voice echoed through the broken walls. Elijah's face was resolute. "Because this is your trial, not your escape." Sarah whispered, "No man can survive such fire." Daniel's chest burned with guilt so raw it felt like flesh tearing. The Malric's voice roared, "You are nothing but your sins." Daniel covered his ears, but the words pierced deeper than sound. He fell to his knees, whispering, "I cannot bear this alone." Elijah called, "Then stop carrying it." Daniel pressed his forehead to the floor, whispering, "If I let go, who will I be?" The Malric's laughter rumbled, a chorus of voices mocking him. Elijah cried, "You will be what grace makes you." Sarah's eyes brimmed with tears, though she fought to hide them. Daniel's body shook, his past mistakes flashing before him. Abandonment, anger, silence. The shadow thickened, feeding on his memories. Daniel groaned, "It is too much." Elijah's hand rested firmly on his shoulder. "No weight is too great when it is no longer yours." Daniel lifted his head, sweat and tears mingling. Daniel screamed, "Take it from me." His cry tore through the ruined church. The Malric lunged forward, claws of shadow striking down. Elijah stepped in front of him, arms spread wide. "You cannot have him," Elijah declared. The shadow struck, light flashing violently as Elijah staggered. Daniel cried out, "No!" Sarah gasped, frozen in terror. Elijah steadied himself, voice unbroken. "Stand, Daniel. Stand in what was given to you." Daniel rose to his feet slowly, body trembling but gaze fixed. The Malric roared, pressing its weight forward, trying to break him before his strength could rise. Daniel shouted, "You do not name me!" His voice rang with force beyond his own. The Malric recoiled, its form shuddering. Sarah stared in disbelief, whispering, "He is standing." Elijah's face glowed with fierce pride. Daniel stepped forward, shoulders shaking, but eyes unyielding. The shadow screamed, "You belong to me." Daniel's hands clenched, tears streaming. "I belong to grace." The words struck like fire, light flickering around his body. The Malric writhed as cracks of light split its form. The ruined church shook as if heaven itself pressed against the darkness, demanding release. Daniel lifted his arms, crying, "If grace is real, then break these chains." His voice shook the sanctuary. Light erupted from him, flooding the ruins. The Malric shrieked as its form shattered into fragments of smoke and fire, dissolving into nothingness. Sarah fell to her knees, eyes wide in stunned awe. Elijah lifted his gaze, whispering, "It is finished." Daniel collapsed to the floor, not in defeat but release, his chest rising with the first free breath in years. For the first time, the silence did not crush him. It held him like arms unseen, steady and eternal. The silence after the Malric's fall felt alive, like breath restored to the world. Daniel collapsed to his knees, chest heaving as if years of burden had broken loose. He pressed his palms to the floor, whispering, "It is gone, but why do I still feel so small?" Elijah stepped forward, steady but gentle, his gray eyes softened by light. "Because humility remains after chains are broken." Sarah remained kneeling near the shattered pews, her auburn hair falling across her face, her body trembling not with disbelief but with awe. She whispered, "I saw it break, and I felt it too." Daniel lifted his gaze toward her, his face streaked with tears but softened by a faint glow of peace. "You doubted, but you stood with me," he said. Sarah shook her head. "I doubted because I feared being seen, just as you did." Daniel extended his hand toward her, voice quiet but firm. "Then, let us walk into the light together." For the first time, Sarah's skeptical eyes softened, a trace of belief flickering inside her. Daniel rose slowly, unsteady but no longer crushed, the ruined sanctuary now bathed in morning light streaming through broken glass. Elijah walked closer, his voice firm yet tender. "You faced your darkness, and it broke because you did not stand alone." Daniel placed a hand on his chest, whispering, "It still hurts, but the hurt feels different, lighter." Sarah stood, brushing dust from her worn coat. Her voice cracked. "I mocked belief, but I could not mock what I saw today." Elijah's smile was weary but bright. "Faith is not born in laughter or mockery, but in fire and tears." Daniel turned to Sarah, his eyes reflecting both pain and hope. "You are not bound by your doubts. You can walk free too." Sarah's lips trembled. "If he could see me through, as he saw you, maybe I could believe." Daniel reached toward the broken window where sunlight poured in. "Grace is for the broken, for you, for me, for all of us." The air carried peace instead of shadow. The sanctuary, once suffocating with darkness, now held an air of fragile holiness. Daniel walked toward the altar he once cursed, placing his hand on its broken surface. He whispered, "I left this place in anger, but I return, not as I was." Elijah's face glowed with pride as he spoke softly, "You return not in shame, but in grace." Sarah stepped beside Daniel, her voice unsteady. "I still fear what faith demands, but I fear more what emptiness leaves." Daniel turned to her, eyes calm. "Faith does not demand, it redeems." She lowered her gaze, whispering, I have carried guilt of my own, and I hid it behind reason. Elijah placed a hand on both their shoulders. Guilt is only a shadow, and shadows vanish when light remains. Daniel closed his eyes, breathing deeply. For the first time, his soul no longer carried the weight of unseen eyes as judgment, but as comfort. He whispered, I am seen, and I am not destroyed. Daniel walked to the broken doorway of the church, where the outside world awaited. He paused, looking back at Elijah and Sarah. The fight is not gone, but I no longer carry it alone. Elijah nodded. You carry grace now, and grace carries you. Sarah's lips curved faintly, unsure but genuine. Perhaps I will learn to trust again. Daniel breathed in the crisp morning air as the sunlight touched his face. His scars remained, but his soul felt free. He whispered, If this is the path, I will walk it step by step. Daniel stepped outside, the dawn sky painted with gold and pale blue. Birds circled above, their wings catching the first rays of light. He whispered, I am no longer unseen. Elijah followed with quiet dignity, Sarah trailing with hesitant hope. Daniel turned his gaze upward, his eyes wet with tears but alight with peace. His voice rose softly. I was lost, but grace found me. The silence that followed was not empty but full, alive with unseen presence. Daniel walked forward, each step a vow that brokenness was no longer his ending.